Hi, and welcome to this video about chapter 4 in the book Thought is a System. Besides the ideas I've already mentioned previously in chapter 1, 2, 3, in the fourth chapter, Bohm opens up to the connection of those ideas to such things as insight, truth, imagination, fantasy, reality, the self-image, identity, creativity, our being, the ground of existence, objectlessness, and a few more. The path to chapter 4 is not a short one. The first chapters, if we have looked into the ideas of chapter 1, 2, 3, we arrive at a form of basis for looking at something new. The first chapters deal with a lot of rather large ideas. Even if the video turns out to be a little bit too long, I will give a brief review of the first chapters. The idea we are looking at is that thought is a system. It means that it's not just the part we are currently looking at or engaged in that is appearing in our mind that is important, but all the other parts are informing the present situation as well, even if they don't appear to us in the mind. The system is presented by thoughts, often triggered by this system of reflexes that we have been describing. It means that the first reaction is automatic. This automatic function is then compensated by thought being highly active, trying to sort out the situation that has been triggered. It means, in short, that what appears to us is that it is not thought that is responsible for the current experience or the trouble we are having, but rather what is appearing or presented in the mind are such things like anger, anxiety, and so forth. But what appears to us are the symptoms of something much deeper. We are accustomed to thinking about systems when it comes to medical questions, but perhaps not looking at thought in this way. Bohm also outlines how there is a fault, a systematic fault in thought that pervades the whole system we are talking about. It's not that one thought is right, another one is false. It's a fault that is all through the system. And we know that thought is actively participating and affecting our perception. And we generally don't see how we are adding or changing our perception. We simply just see the way we think, just like we feel the way we think, just like when we touch a table with the hand. We see the hand, but we don't see the thought behind our feeling or our perception. In general, we don't know what to do with this incoherence that appears to us. We have a conflict. We are battling our own views, our own feelings, and we also take it a step even further. We are justifying our behavior, or justifying our current situation. And this is what Bohm calls sustained incoherence. This whole operation is supported by one of the most powerful forces in our thinking, which is the thought about necessity. necessity, absolute necessity. And the system also creates images of things that we have very little knowledge of, what to do with it. For instance, we have our self-image, we have the problem of the observer and the observed. How does identity actually work? How do we tackle such a thing as society or the culture that we happen to live in? What does it mean to be conditioned? Is there something unconditioned? And when we begin to grasp these things and see the connection between them, the mind begins to have something new. The mind begins to hesitate, slow down, and it's naturally sustaining its own reactions, the movement of the system. So before action follows from the reflexes, there is the sense of feeling that something is not working properly. The reflexes themselves, the automatic reaction, we can't do much there, but Bohm suggests we have to experiment with this in order to bring out the words behind it. The words are hidden, they are not immediately present in our awareness. We don't want to arrive in a situation where we suddenly start saying, okay, now I know how things are, because that way we fall back into the same pattern. We have new knowledge that is working like a reflex, and we may become dogmatic or start responding with this new knowledge instead. Rather, what we want is for the mind to be aware of this mistake it has made and see it as a chance or an opportunity of functioning in a more healthy way. We could say that we have laid the foundation for learning. We arrive at a new place, and this place is sufficiently deep for something new to operate. So, one of the things that Bohm says is required to touch the reflexes is something called, or that he calls, insight. Yeah. So what to say about insight? Bohm says, for instance, if you don't want to call it insight, you could call it a perception of truth, perception of what is true. Truth would be a movement that doesn't deceive itself, that doesn't deceive us about that which is available to us. There is a possibility for the system to become more coherent. Truth is not a reflex. We need the reflex to a certain degree, but we don't need to be dominated by the reflex. Once again, this chapter touches on many things, too many things to go deeply into at the same time. But for instance, he talks about imagination and fantasy, reality, analysis of the self-image, what is longing, identity, what is the creative being. And there is a section about science that goes very deeply into his ideas about science. So he talks about truth and the defense of the flaws, and he mentions how we will probably, when we are creating AI, artificial intelligence, simply transfer the same mistake and flaw into AI. It will be adopted by the way we produce or reproduce artificial intelligence. So what I will focus on, or try to do in this video, is to talk about the fact that things are not the way thought tells us. That seems like perhaps a superficial and obvious point, but how does that relate to proprioception, perception, intelligence, awareness, and insight and truth? If we are going to say something about intelligence, we could ask the question, first of all, are we able to see that thought or the system is not all that there is? Do we believe this? Do we think it or feel it, intuit it, have a glimpse into that there is something beyond the system? There might be a way out. There might be something substantial that is worth pursuing and consider. In order to do so, we must have the ability, at least partially, to see thought as one whole system with all of the things as a part of it. The system, says Bohm, is actually a very small part of reality, but it acts in a very powerful way. Especially new assumptions go into the system, and solutions are just more thoughts expanding the system. Intelligence, however, could be said to be the freedom required for the reflexes to change. Perhaps you remember Bohm said that the universe or the cosmos or nature is operating in an intelligent way, but he's also suggesting that thought has not taken the path of intelligence. Rather, it is acting in an arbitrary way, combining a lot of reflexes and memories to put something together. And then it is compensating this with thinking rapidly and thinking all the time, in fact, to compensate this arbitrary mode of operation. Now, when we are thinking in the present tense, something more is available to us, something that is able to correct a thought if it is incorrect. If the system is too rigid, the system itself will fight this change. It doesn't allow it. It doesn't allow correction. It overrides the operation of intelligence in benefit of preserving the system in the way it's seen to be necessary. I think in my personal experience, the word intelligence is perhaps the point that is or was the most easy to be sure about and certain about. There is something in our experience that is in harmony. There's harmony in nature. There's something beautiful going on, which cannot be easily captured by words. But there is a respect for a sort of grand design, not designed by God, but there is a factor in life as a whole, and if we give a name to it, it's easy for me to give it the name intelligence. Similarly to intelligence, we have the word awareness. Awareness is often said in spiritual terms to be I am awareness. We are not using it quite in that manner. In this case, we are specifically interested in being aware of what is going on. We have to actually be aware of an attempt of the system to operate in order to learn about it. And as we learn about it, we must put it into words, because the words are not visible. Making the words visible is a way for the system to suddenly react to them as a cause instead of something hidden. We have, I'm repeating myself sometimes, I know that, but we have this problem that was what thought is doing, and then it is presenting the problems it is creating as something independent of thought, standing by itself. Yeah. So appropriate perception or awareness, proprioception are closely related. If there is such an awareness, an openness to the conditioning, the reflexes, the conditioning will begin to reveal itself. We will not be so perplexed by its activity because it's no longer something shooting out from the hidden. We can see, for instance, that our conditioning is information about reality. It can be correct, it can be incorrect. So Bohm suggests that we reserve such a word as truth for something really subtle, deep and meaningful. We shouldn't use truth merely to suggest right or wrong, correct, incorrect. Rather, he presents a definition of truth as being a factor in what is. So we have what is, everything that is, what is. And truth is something that is straight, honest, faithful toward which is. It doesn't divide it. Truth is not merely a question of correct or incorrect. It is a key factor in what is the sense of when we consider or experience what is, there is not just what we are experiencing, but there is a movement. It is changing. We are adding something to it. And truth would be that movement or that adding, but does not act in a way that is deceiving us. Truth or insight, if it is true and deep, does have an effect on the reflex system. The reflexes cannot act in a way that deceives us if we have truth. Truth and insight opens the door to a freedom for the reflexes to change. Bohm puts it that freedom is a perception where a new order of necessity has become possible. Bohm also says that truth or insight is not limited to a personal thing. It's wrong to say personal. Also in the spiritual domain, we want to point out that we need insight and truth, not just individually, but together, collectively. So this is close to the point why Bohm is looking into this. He's very interested in a collective situation, not just the personal situation of an individual case of enlightenment. Or we need it together, and he takes the issue further because we need it together. Therefore, we need, for instance, dialogue. We need to find inside the truth that pertain to the collective, not merely the individual. In that sense, if we do all this, if we go this far, then we reach a point where we cannot proceed only individually. We can refine our own mind and insight, but there is such a thing as the collective, which again relates to the problem of the world. So this is the niche or the part that interests David Bohm the most. Is there a solution for human beings on the whole? So Bohm also says for this to take place, the point is that we need, for truth or insight to operate in a meaningful way, the brain has to have a certain situation. It has to be healthy enough and clear enough. It has to engage, but not engage in self-deception. The engagement has to be done intelligently. So self-deception, for instance, means to be dominated by the chemistry and all of it. Civilization as a whole has been dominated by this incoherence for so long, and therefore, collectively, we cannot presently respond to insight or to truth. For the individual, this might be possible, desirable, but as a collective group, we are simply not able to do it. It is, of course, impossible to cover all of these issues in a video like this, and perhaps my attempt today remain at the superficial level. However, we should not, or I should not, be discouraged by that fact. The feeling that all of these difficult areas and finding the right words in the right moment, even if those are not totally clear, all at once or immediately or now, because already at the point of learning, at the point of halting the system, suspending it, looking into it, already this learning implies the unknown. The unknown is learning, we are learning. It is the unknown revealing itself. We may be all too eager to have all of the unknown revealed immediately, but there is a kind of a tipping point where we have this sense of a creative way of being. It is not many people that have gone into this issue in the way that Bohm has, but we begin to feel that we are a learning being, a creative being, rather than operating by the way of the system. We are not an identified being, identified with what appears to us. The identified being has this intention of remaining a certain way, what feels secure or seems reasonable, to remain this way forever or for a long time. And one thing that we discover about how the unknown reveals itself is, in fact, that sometimes it reveals itself in a repetitious way. It seems very similar to something that will last a long time or last forever, and thought is very adequate for representing those things. Mountains last a long time. Rivers. Hunger appears often. So Bohm says, however, that a thought is an appearance that is projected onto the background of the wholeness. And the difficulty is not the awareness of it, but the difficulty is that the right thoughts do not show up with the limited scope of our sense perception. The background is coherent, but the projected thought may be incoherent or coherent, and we are learning about it. We are creating an environment for learning by at first considering the conditioning. Learning is on the same side, so to speak, as the unconditioned, as intelligence, as awareness, as insight and truth, even if it is not as complete. We begin to notice that the mind is operating more sensibly. We are not necessarily accumulating knowledge about these things, but we notice that there is a difference in how we operate. We may be more peaceful, there might be more clarity when something is disturbed or springs up, And there is definitely a feeling that the system doesn't have to dominate us in so many areas that possibly has been the case earlier. Bohm puts it in this way. He says, the electrochemical smog begins to clear up. Since we have taken the time to look into it deeply, the parts, the whole thing together, if there is new smog, we might begin to look for where is it coming from, which part or which area is generating this. We have developed a form of suspension instead of fixing or acting upon it, or acting it out, or being confused about it. And personally, I think it's a very interesting formulation that Bohm has, that unlike the body thought did not evolve to be proprioceptive. Therefore, our inability to see the system in action, it has to do with the fact that it simply isn't visible. What we want or need to see simply isn't visible. It's not clear where to look or what to look at. So, therefore, what the problem is and what it appears to be is not the same. It appears to be anger, but we can see that there is a flow of information going on, a flow of connected information from parts that are at first considered to be separate, but then considered to be parts of a larger system. This flow of meaning then becomes more important than the individual thoughts we have about struggling with what is appearing to us. Okay, so the video became a little bit longer than I wanted, but thank you for watching.